Well, good afternoon, investors, and welcome back from your Memorial Day holiday weekend. We hope you all had a great weekend. My name is Mark Robertson. I am joined here by the mathematical magnificence. I got him backwards this time, Ken. Magnificent mathematician from mid-Michigan, Ken Cavula. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. You can just stop all that stuff. You don't have to keep doing it every week, okay?
I have certain standards with Gologly, lurking out there. You got to work on this stuff. We're also joined here by Kim Butcher. Good afternoon, Kim.
Hello, everybody.
You're still in Indiana? Uh,
I will be here
in project
until
mode?
still ripping out walls and carpeting. I then have decided that I am going to treat myself to a wonderful vacation, and so the end of August, I'm going on a cruise.
Awesome. And we're also joined here by Houston's Matt Spielman. Good afternoon, Matt.
Good afternoon.
I did stick your quote in there from the Black Swan, so we can have some fun with that, Matt.
All righty. It's it's kind of like a good meal that reheats better. The second time around, I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I think it's one of those books where I now know enough to appreciate everything he's saying, and he speaks that deeply.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, I went back and reread Arnold Bernard, the founder of Value Line, his book from 1958, and probably got more out of it this time around. So
Yeah. I'm sure the Intelligent Investor is the same way. I know. I think I had 2 or 3 false starts on the Intelligent Investor, but love going back to that occasionally too.
When you're Matt, when you're reading the Intelligent Investor, make sure you read the new one that's annotated.
Yeah.
Because the annotations are every bit as good as the original language in the book. I'm trying to think of the guy that did the annotating. Mark, do you remember his name? Who did the annotating?
It's Jason Zweig.
Zweig from the Journal.
Zweig,
yeah.
Right.
I read it. I listened to a podcast interview from him, and he said, because he's done a few editions now, at least 2.
Yep.
And he said he specifically did not go back to look at what he said before. He wrote it fresh with his mind now, and then went back to see how consistent he was. But he didn't want to annotate his annotations. It was sort of a new view of it.
Well, they're very well done, and they do a lot of updating and telling you when things are probably not as true as they were when the book was written in the 50s, and things that are probably just as true as they were when they were in the 50s. So he does a real nice job of kind of bringing the book up to date.
Yeah, when Jason Zweig retires, I hope Morgan Housel picks up the slack. That would be interesting to see what he thinks.
That would be a good idea. Yeah, I ran into the same thing with Bernard's book. If you put it in the context of the average stock paying 6 or 8% dividends, you have to adjust your thinking for that back then, and the book reflects that. And the same is true with Benjamin Graham's early works also. Very dividend focused. And if you switch it to the fact that everything flows from cash flow, which is basically the theme of the Value Line book, it works out okay. All right, let's go ahead and take care of business here. Our first business is this. No investment recommendation is intended. You guys all know this. A lot of familiar names in the audience. Welcome back. This is entirely an educational demonstration. We really do like to demonstrate the really cool things that we have observed with the Modern Investment Club movement over the years, from the discovery to the analysis of stocks and the deployment in portfolios. And more importantly, the fact that many, many ideas come from all of us, all of you. And it's just a lot of fun discovering opportunity in a big tent. But please do your own homework before making any decision. If we own something, we'll try to remember to disclose that. But it really doesn't matter whether Mark owns shares of Portillo's or not. No one cares. Can't move. Well, Kim might care, but the market does not move based on what I actually do or own. It does seem to move when I think about things, but that might just be me. Anyhow, form your own opinions. We are not the boss of you. If you'd like copies of the slides or if you have follow-up questions or future topics, our 2 email addresses are down there. Ken, anything you'd like to add?
No, except I worry about your Portillo's holding, Mark. Okay.
You do worry about it. Well, speaking of Portillo's, I'll give you something else to worry about. Yeah, the Vatican is going through some rather dramatic change. And, you've got some new buildings going up, and I had no idea that they had, the Buc-ee's was given some consideration over there.
Is it big enough to hold a Buc-ee's?
In the middle of St. Peter's Square, right? I didn't think you had the nerve to actually say these things. Okay, keep going.
I'm digging my own grave, huh? And of course, the Vatican has had some change in the stained glass windows, and that's to be expected. All right, Portillo's. For some reason, Ken keeps asking me why is the price dropping. I have no idea. But there's our ketchup and relish chart, known as an Ishimoku cloud. And again, we keep promising, and someday we'll deliver that. Somebody out there thinks that chart's telling them something, and I want to understand that. I mean, I used to discount the point and figure charts, and I over the years have developed a deeper respect for them, and the same may be true here. Who knows? We'll see. All right, pressing on. Now that we have jumped in the express basket to hell. This is actually from a few months ago. This is not our perspectives for the day. I just wanted to place that Portillo's performance in context. These were a bunch of stocks picked around Thanksgiving, a couple weeks before Thanksgiving last year. And Portillo's is hanging in there okay, even though the ink is red. A lot of carnage in this area. And this was from a group of hedge funds that were trying to call out their best expectations of performance. So we'll just keep going on, keep moving on.
And you probably can't say it's tariffs.
Probably can't, although they do try. Surcharges on the menu. All right, so it's a fairly busy week. Some fairly interesting companies in the update. We are in commencement season, and we are going to dance to the music tonight. We'll talk a little bit about that. And United Healthcare is obviously in the crosshairs. I visited a CVS last night. Took about a half hour to check out and get a 400-foot long receipt. So nothing has changed there yet. And can you believe that Kermit has actually made commencement speeches before, huh?
It just sticks in my head that he's been the commencement speaker 2 or 3 different times prior to just a couple of days ago. But this sounds just like him in that quote. So I appreciate what he has to say, but I think I can remember him giving speeches. I should just go to AI and ask when was the last time that Kermit gave a commencement speech. They'll probably be able to tell me. So.
Or they'll make something up. Yeah, I like that. Life is better when we leap together. That certainly dovetails with our theme. It may have been the first Kermit speech at Maryland. Who knows? Doesn't matter. But of course, one of the ultimate graduation speeches of all time is right here. That's the close from Steve Jobs at Stanford in 2005, and it's pretty good commencement presentation. All right. Let's go ahead and talk the stock market. Things have calmed down a lot. Ken is happier now with all of the variations seem to be calming down until today anyhow. But the last week or so has been a little bit more of a less hectic market. The average return right now is around 10%. You can see that by the way, that light green bar on the right, which is a quarterly summation of the stocks in the Value Line Investment Survey. That's why I snuck in that picture of the book just to remind us of what we're looking at with the green bars. That's been above 11,000 and below 10,000 this quarter. So that's how much it's moved around. And that causes some changes in opinion. Anything you got here, Ken? That 45% is a new recent low for Value Line.
Well, and it's just what we've been saying for the last month, Mark, that it takes Value Line a little bit longer to turn the ship. They don't jump down in 20 and 30% increments, usually at least. And so we finally have Value Line and Manifest essentially at the same number, and that makes me happy. 9799. That's, they should be very close together. They're essentially measuring the same kinds of things.
And all right, now all of you out there, I know you haven't been listening to Ken or myself here the last couple of minutes. You've been reading that quote at the bottom, and that was provided by Matt. Matt, I think this is it's a rather pointed observation by Talib.
Yeah, he's not actually from Gen X. He's a little older, but he's as sarcastic as Gen X can be. But you have to think anytime you're looking at a media source and thinking they have wisdom, you have to think about how much of the reason they're transmitting to you is because they can talk well or write well, as opposed to what they know about the subject.
Yeah, it's a scary thought. I can remember spending time with the publisher and editor of Barron's many years ago, and we talked at length about how rarely, and it has changed a little bit in recent years, but how rarely back then, this is 20 years ago now, was anybody held accountable for things that they said on CNBC. They keep bringing back the same experts, basically all over the map with their results, and nobody seemed to, none of the producers seemed to care whether or not there was any correct moments in their forecasts as they made them. And that has changed a little bit. Barron's does a better job of keeping track of their track record, and others have done the same. We, of course, are kind of obsessed over it, but it really does make a point. And it also underscores the fact that we don't really try to predict the future. We try to look at the patterns for the companies that we study. We basically say to ourselves, well, if this continues in this same pattern, this is the value I might expect for my company. And that it's a little different than trying to do a hardcore forecast. That's just my way of thinking about it. Any thoughts, Ken?
No, because I've watched many people that can't even do a percentage talked on some of these, especially regional and local television, talk about the stock market and not even understand how percentages work. So it doesn't even have to be a complicated mathematical model to try to fool a lot of people. It can just be simple arithmetic. Sometimes it's being used in an incorrect way. So I understand what the quote is trying to say. I don't know if I agree with it 100%, but I understand what it's trying to say.
Sure. And Kim, do you have CNBC playing in the background while you do all your project work down there?
Never. I have music in my earbuds listening to it.
They can't be wrong if you can't hear them, right?
Perfectly true.
All right, pressing on. Speaking of being wrong, here are the Groundhog Challenge standings. Ken adeptly pointed out that I had grabbed the wrong column, so there is no last week column because I have no idea when I captured that column. It's sometime in the past, and I can't even tell you when. But a little bit of a shift in the leadership. We had a kind of a rough week along with everybody else. Dropped a couple of points on the average return. 50% of you are still beating the market. That's a huge number. And I take great comfort in that I can almost see the dust coming off the Graham Steffens monkey. I'm on the move, Ken. I'm on the move.
He's 160. You're 180, 88. All right, I got it.
I could see him in my windshield now. It'll soon be in my rearview mirror. What are your thoughts?
You're still not within sight of Ethan, my grandson, at 5th place, and Don Sheets in the Wolves Club at 8th place. And I promised that I would talk about them as long as they stayed in the top 10. So there, I did it. We have a lot of familiar names in the top 50 here, Mark. An awful lot of familiar names. I'm humbled by the fact that so many people can do so well over long periods of time. These are people in a lot of these top 50 spots that have been in this contest for years, and they can continue to put up scores that rank in the top 50 or 40 or 30 or even top 20, a lot of them. So kudos to them, and a nice note from Bill Griffith, which we'll talk about in just a little bit.
Yeah, the Wichita Warriors, led by John Kimmel, are steadily advancing up the list again, and they are among those perennials that Ken was just talking about, and several others. Good stuff. Well, here's that note. And basically, Bill is basically saying, nice to be in first. I must say that I covet and I'm envious. But we thought this was kind of interesting because he had basically sat there and scratched his head and said, I can't remember exactly what I did. So he went back and looked, and he had used an old template from, I'm pretty sure it's a third party program, Stock Rover. Any of you guys familiar with Stock Rover?
I was not, and I went and looked at it, and I thought, this is just it's another service to be able to screen for stocks.
Okay. Well, and as he dug deeper, he figured out that it was actually based on some better investing principles. So that's all cool. And I do remember the article written by Bonnie about Stock Rover back about 10 years ago. So anyhow, that's where the idea came from. Here is just a quick look at, and this was inspired by people from the Northern Florida chapter in the article on Better Investing. So Bill's just basically showing, and he's not exuding a whole lot of confidence here, Ken. If I was in first place, I would be ready to call it a day and stop the contest. But
we know the contest would be over, so.
If I get there, we're locking it in, baby. All right. Here's just a quick reminder to that subject we talked about with Ted Cruz's Invest America, Brad Gerstner's program to basically create a 401k emulation for babies born in the United States. And we were just making the point that it would be cool to give them some choices beyond just the S&P 500, because you know what? If you go back and you check the first 10 years of the century, that S&P 500 didn't do much for 10 years, just like Ralph Acampora told us would happen. And it's been on a streak since then. That streak will come to an end someday. So maybe a little bit of other options, things like picking better companies or better prices comes to mind.
Well, since we last met, Mark, the House did pass their version of the budget, and this particular program is in that House version that passed by a single vote. It's going to the Senate now, and there's a number of senators, a half dozen or maybe even more, that have been on TV in the last 2 or 3 days, and they seem to be fairly evenly divided about not whether it's a good program. They all begin their dialogues by talking about what a great program it is, what a great idea it is, but then they seem to be split almost evenly between it's a great idea, but can we afford it? I think the affordability issue is a red herring. I just don't think that that's something that we should even be speaking about, whether it can be afforded or not. But there does seem to be some dispute about whether the program will make it through the Senate bill, and then of course they have to meet together in reconciliation before anything gets sent to the president's desk. So whether the bill makes it that far, I don't know. But again, it's certainly a good, solid idea. Mark and I have a number of little tweaks we'd like to see in the bill, but I think that no matter what form it ends up in, if you end up putting a little bit of money in a kid's account and then saying to the family and the community, help these kids become capitalists, I think that's a great idea in the long run.
And just to be clear, in its present form, we're talking about the government providing $1,000 seed money when the child is born, and then friends, family, and companies can actually donate up to $5,000 a year in a tax qualified account. And this is basically looking back, what if this program had existed 18 years ago, looking at 3 different investment options or approaches. And I'll take anywhere from 300 to almost 800,000, for an 18-year-old.
Yeah,
Cool.
I did get one question on this graph, Mark, and I made an assumption that I hope is true. I'm assuming that you fully funded it over the months, over the years that we're looking at. Is that true?
Right.
This is fully funded up to the 5,000.
5,000 added every year, and then of course the amount of appreciation matches whatever happened in those indices, like the value line arithmetic average, S&P 500, and NASDAQ 100.
Yeah, this is not what 1,000 would grow to, this graph. This is what yearly contributions, bringing the extra 5,000 in on a yearly basis. And we know that not everybody could afford that, but even $1,000 being allowed to sit for that long would have a decent pile of cash ready for somebody to think that there might be something to this capitalistic idea.
Yep. Good stuff. All right. Switching gears to the performance perspective, and I'm not sure why, but I went back 15 years instead of 10 just to get a different look at it. Added Bitcoin just for some perspective, since it's kind of a 10-year anniversary for Bitcoin. There was that infamous celebration of the guy who actually used 2 Bitcoins to buy a couple pizzas, or 3 Bitcoins to buy some pizzas 10 years ago, and it means that he spent a couple $1 billion for that pizza. Wild stuff. But you can see that all of our community favorites, with a couple of notable exceptions, have kept up pretty well over that 15-year time frame. And the round table has stumbled a little bit, but we got a lot of faith in her. That'll be okay over the long term. Any thoughts here, Ken, or should we roll on?
Let's keep rolling. Yeah.
By the way, there are 2 entries for we didn't mention it back here with the groundhog. Bitcoin is on here. It went from out of the top 50 to number 17, and then forgive me, I don't remember. One of the participants has a Bitcoin position in their portfolio. First time that has happened in 19 years. All right. So that's how it ended up in that leadership position there. Here is the Buttonwood portfolio, cranking away at about 4K, although Ken tells me it's probably up a few percentage points today. And we're going to just leave that alone for a couple weeks, and we're going to try not to be too overactive going forward. We'll accumulate and only jettison companies when we really have to, but we are getting a little bit of criticism that are you guys being a little too active?
I do think that we're down to only 2 that we're really taking a hard look at, and one of them we're being quite patient with, and that's Gentex, because of the par value attached to it. And the other one that we're taking a hard look at is Lululemon, because of where its product comes from and all the tariff talk and everything else. And the perceived growth right now for Lululemon is really subpar to what's going on. I think it's really important that if you're new to this whole idea, you kind of remind yourself that it's over long periods of time, it's hard for par to really exceed growth by very much. When the sales grow, then the earnings grow. When the earnings grow, then the stock price grows. And if you don't have a lot of sales growth, par can't stay up there at a high rate forever in the absence of sales growth. So that's why we're looking very carefully at Lulu.
Yep, makes sense. And this is kind of a different way to say the same thing that Ken said. I mean, as your balance goes up and par drops of the overall portfolio, either from increases in the prices of the individual positions or um, maybe a slight downdraft or stumble in the company fundamentals. But again, we draw your attention to the final column on the right. That's the one you really want to keep improving in the right direction. So we'll continue to monitor that and have some fun. Hopefully keep that headed in the right direction. Did you want to say something to that, Ken?
We have money falling into the portfolio again at the first of the month, right?
Only if I'm good.
Only if you're good. Okay.
Yeah, I have to be well behaved in order for that to happen.
All right.
Keep my investor happy, which I did very successfully. She had her birthday last week, and it was she was pampered appropriately. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about this one. Roundtable tonight will feature Sly and the Family Stone and Jeremy Irons, and this notion of dance to the music, thanks to Kevin Gologly, and some of the weird things he inspires. Here's a moment from the movie Margin Call. If you've not seen Margin Call, it's basically a chronicle of the Lehman Brothers collapse back in 2008, and it's a decent movie. I do object, though, that Demi Moore is kind of a mini villain in the movie, and her last name in the movie is Robertson. So I'm sure that was a oversight on their part. It's just wrong for that to be the case. But this is the dialogue at a emergency 3 a.m. board meeting, as it happened back in the financial crisis, and it was a kind of a playful exchange between the chairman of the board and a junior associate who had spotted the fact that they were going to go out of business if they didn't do something. And interesting movie. Probably good to watch a second time to catch some of the nuances. But anyhow, that's what the music is about tonight, and music stopping. And Ken yells at me every time we have to spend more time explaining the cover slide than the rest of the program, but oh well. All right, so I thought what we would do here, we've got a couple minutes left, talk a little bit about tonight's roundtable and walk through some screening results. I am still shopping. I have not given Ken my final selection for tonight yet. Here is a look at a Manifest Investing screen on Manifest Rank, which means that we are basically seeking companies that rank in the top 1% or so of all companies with respect to their quality and their projected annual return forecast. And I also limited this one to double-digit growth. And Ken, you don't like the output. What are you grumpy about now?
Well, I'm not grumpy about it, but I think that a lot of times Manifest Rank can pull out stocks that have a really high par. You can see that 4 of them have an orange background, and that might mean that the par is too good to be true even. But when you associate a really high par with, in my mind at least, a really low earning stability, and to me anything under 50 is a low earning stability, when you associate those two, you end up with a stock that might not be the kind of stock that you're interested in to put into a better investing, or for that matter, into a fundamental portfolio.
Sure.
And there's a lot of them on this list. I mean, I'm not sure that I would be looking at any insurance stocks right now, and Equitable especially has just a terrible looking visual analysis, but it also has a 23 EPS stability, and that might cause a little bit of pain and suffering. I think there are a lot of better medical device companies than Lantheus, and the list is short, so we can't see the second 10 or the second 20, but I would probably move down the list into the second 10 or the second 20 if I really was interested in a medical device maker, because I think there's a lot of them. But I do like the top 2 on the list. I think that Axos, even with its financial strength rating at under 50, I think that Axos is a very interesting company that deserves a second or third look, especially when you consider the metrics that we've learned are very telling for a bank.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Axos is the bank with no regional offices, no branch offices. Axos is completely online, and that's a whole new model that you have to take a real look at. It's probably a model that's going to gain some traction as we move through the next 5 or 10 years here. I also I looked at ZTO Express pretty seriously, Mark, until I discovered where it was from.
Yeah.
Then I wasn't as interested in it. So this is ZTO Express is an East Asian company with a lot of things going on in China with the company. Onto, I think it has a lot of interest to it. So I still think there's 3 or 4 companies that are interesting. And what Mark said before the meeting struck me a real right in the middle, where he said, just think of these stock results as screens, not only when we're looking at these, but when we get further on in the slide deck here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the screen. It's only meant to give ideas, and it sometimes gives us bad information. So that's where we are with this.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the company Onto, but I certainly would compare it versus Taiwan, or as you're going to see, ASML. But yeah, I only like a couple of these. And, I think the Axos financial strength, it might be Value Line being a little bit stubborn on their rating. I don't know. I'd have to look closer. All right. So then I said, well, all right, what about this? I went to Grok and I asked this question. Why not go straight to the question I'm trying to answer? I'm looking for a stock to present tonight. And I thought that Grok did a fairly decent job of trying to lasso an idea. And this is a decent study, a decent suggestion for further study, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on this one?
First of all, I like the choice, but it's not a classic growth stock.
No.
It's a highly cyclical stock. It's a foreign stock. It's a Dutch stock, the Netherlands, and it has a lot of challenges when it comes to all this chatter about what are we going to restrict from sales, what is not going to be restricted from sales, and just because it's a Dutch stock doesn't mean there aren't people putting pressure on them to restrict their technology, because this is the best technology at the moment in the world, and every single semiconductor manufacturer has to use this technology if they're going to make these high class chips that are the demand chip. We're not talking about the simple chips that do a single task. ASML doesn't help too much with those, but if you're going to make a GPU, or and especially some of the more sophisticated GPUs, you're going to have to use ASML technology.
Yeah,
I like the stock.
Matt, did I see that you posted an update or a summary of recent developments at ASML in the forum? Am I right about that?
Yeah, I believe it was CNBC took a tour of ASML for their latest version of machine, which they've shipped 5 of, but they're $400 million each, and that's so that they already were essentially or close to a monopoly, but they have the next step going, and that is truly where they are alone.
And I did notice that 12 or 15 minutes long, so a pretty decent tour of the ASML
segment, not a whole book.
Okay, take a look at that and understand a little bit better. Maybe I'll do that before tonight's session. All right, and then we turn to another source. These guys generally have some pretty decent ideas that rhyme with our general outlook, but Ken would beg to differ on this one. How's that? I
I'm just being the
sugarcoated that for you.
naysayer today. Yeah, me being the naysayer. I asked Mark if he knew what they were smoking on this list right here. I do like two or three of the stocks on the list, but again, there's some real weak sisters here. If you're looking for high quality growth, this is not a list giving you 10 high quality growth stocks. There are some good growth stocks, but there's also some serious turnaround plays. I mean, you have to look at Nike and say that it's a turnaround at the moment. I really like TJX. I really like Mercado Libre. You have to ask yourself, there's, all the stuff that's swirling around Tesla. Is it the investment that everybody thinks it is? The market at the moment has punished it some weeks and then greatly rewarded it other weeks. It's extremely volatile, but we've been talking about volatility as opportunity. So maybe there's opportunity there. Some of these companies are not household words. I mean, does anybody out there know what Grab Holdings does? Mark, do you?
Not yet.
Not yet.
They were recently added to the Value Line Standard Edition, though, so we'll be taking a closer look. Yeah, several of these are early stage, and they are not classic quality growth companies, as Ken has already said. And for years, a couple of the people at the Motley Fool have been fascinated by the Central American airports, and I'm not sure how well that idea has come to pass. Bill Mann comes to mind. But yeah, there could be a very interesting long-term opportunity in that geography.
We have a hand in the air, and we have a hand in the air, and he's going to have to behave himself, or I'm going to hit the mute switch real quickly, okay? But this is our friend who's going to be on with us this evening at the roundtable. This is Kevin Galogli from the Maryland chapter. That's the Washington D.C. area. And Kevin, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead. What do you have to say to us? You'll need to unmute yourself. There you go.
You got through security?
Oh, this is poetic justice. His mic isn't working. So.
Well, the last I knew, he was trapped in security, and he was dropping our names, Ken, and it wasn't helping. At an airport.
Kevin, we can't hear you, so something is wrong with your microphone at the moment. So I'm going to take your hand down and mute you back, and if you can get your mic fixed, put your hand back up again. Okay? Go on, Mark.
All right. All right, here's another place that I turned. Again, I'm just looking for ideas. I'm not making any judgments at this point. I'm just getting nudges, and went to the chat bot known as Perplexity, entered that for a prompt, and it came back with quite a unusual response. That's sugar-coated. Yeah, I can't repeat what Ken had to say about it earlier offline. Yeah, it's he pointed out that it looks like they made an effort to find something in each sector. And I'm just going to say, I pointed out, well, some of those aren't even sectors, excuse me, but
they went and created their own sector division here. So
again, double down on the thinking. First of all, you have to verify the stuff, and it's not by any means a finished product at this point. But there are some interesting names on here. Any analysis of Onto semiconductors probably should include NVIDIA, Taiwan, and some of the others. But yeah, and Palantir down at the bottom, again, relatively early stage, tough to get a handle on the company itself. But I won't be bringing Microsoft because Ken said we can't add to Microsoft.
No, he
last
didn't,
month.
But I will say, Mark, that if you're in the audience right now interested in using some of these AI engines to give you stock ideas. And number one, use it as a screener, not as a stock selector that you're going to actually buy. Use it as a screener, but also you might want to try and tie down that prompt a little bit more. You might ask it to include a few small companies along with the, in the list. You might say to not even have any regard to sector, just give you the 10 best overall. And we are learning that the more specific you get in the prompt, the better results you get from most of the AI engines.
Yeah, and they do evolve and drift, and sometimes they drift in the wrong direction. Yeah, so just keep that all in mind that it's developing, but it did provide a list of companies that could at least be subjected to a closer look. And then finally, I will often go and just look for companies that are oversold, potentially oversold, and you measure that by a relative strength index less than 30. Start to get very interesting if you have a quality company less than 20. But again, there's some damaged goods on here too. You'd want to be able to separate them. And my attention, of course, would be drawn to the ones that have exceptional quality. Copart, although the return forecast is a little bit low, and everybody hates United Health Group right now. So I mean, part of me is just, I can just feel Hugh McManus in the background saying this company is off the charts on the loathing index, clearly loathed and despised. And
we could just take what he said about British Petroleum, about BP a long time ago, and change the name from BP to United Health, and probably use the same talking points. Mark?
Maybe I'll pull up his slides from the BP oil and Gulf of Mexico incident years ago, and I'll just substitute United Health in, and we'll be off and running. My work is done here. Good stuff. I did find it really interesting that Compass Diversified. Don't know much about the company, but this is one where there's such a wide berth of opinions and expectations for the company. It's kind of amazing. I don't want to dig in and just try to understand that a little bit better, in addition to figuring out what they do.
Yeah, it's not too often we put up a list where there's 4 quality rankings in the red, like we have on this list right here. But here's where the quality ranking really serves a major purpose, in my mind at least, and that's putting 4 lines through the 4 that have red quality ratings. There's a reason they're sitting down here at the bottom, the relative strength really low. But again, these ones with quality ratings, at 80 and 90, they certainly deserve a little bit of a look-see. We've followed in the community. We followed Copart for years at various times. It's just not a very appealing sales growth number and PAR number right now, but it is a very high quality stock. I just think that it's the prey of the people that are investing in faster growing companies right now, and Copart's not one of them.
Yep.
So,
and Lantheus is one of our best small companies, I believe, for this year. So it's been on the list. All right. So all I did next was stack them all up, the ones that actually seem to be worth. I'm going to whittle this list down tonight, eliminating some of those lower quality ratings. I did find it interesting. I provided their trailing 12-month sales or their trend. So you can see these are not small companies, pretty much from top to bottom. And then I also find it kind of interesting, considering the work we've done over the last month on having a deeper understanding of projected cash flow growth. That could be a deal breaker for some of these. So higher quality is going to win out. Tesla, Ken, you were talking about Tesla. I mean, I am a Tesla shareholder. I was up 200% for a while last year, and then that went down to 100%, and now I'm back up another 50% or something. Whatever. It's been a wild ride, no pun intended. Mercado Libre kind of sings to me. A lot of cash flow there, and this is that company just lives and breathes scalability, which means that it's its profitability is pretty solid and looking
Well,
pretty good going forward.
here's that grab with a 30% cash flow number, Mark. Maybe the numbers are so small that it's easy to achieve 30% growth. That might be part of the reason. I'm looking at trailing 12-month sales, and that's a pretty small number. So maybe it's not subject yet to the law of large numbers. That might be part of the reason it's really high. I'm anticipating a question about Schwab. Folks, there's no cash flow on Schwab because Schwab is an asset-based company. It doesn't deal basically with cash.
And this is a book value here. That's a book value.
So just make sure that you understand that not all companies are going to have cash flow numbers if they're based in assets. That would be brokers and banks and insurance companies and a few others that I probably have left off the list.
Yep. So the low returns will go away. The low qualities definitely will go away, and I will whittle it down tonight. And I was really hot on this PDD company, and then I figured out that they're actually Temu. So.
Well, I would expect a really good presentation on Grupo Aeroport Pacifico, and you better call your daughter to help get pronunciation on it, okay?
Well, considering that in Kevin's company, we may need a complete translation before we're done. But no, there's some good companies on there. I'm actually strongly drawn to United Health. I'll need a compelling story to knock that out of the leader position, just because people are hating on it so much. So we'll take a look at that also, and that ASML will probably be a competitor. Legitimate competitor also. All right. So let's go ahead and close out with a couple minutes on a question that we get flavors of this question from time to time. People want to know, how can a company have such a high return forecast when its growth is relatively low, especially when they don't have dividends to make up to or partially explain the difference. And Ken, I think you believe that the second paragraph asks and answers itself.
I do. I think that this question comes from our friend Pat Donnelly in the Pittsburgh area. And I think that Pat's settled exactly on the reason that it happens. And he's written it in his second paragraph there and put a question mark after it. But we could just as easily make that a declarative sentence and put a period after it. Because when trouble happens, the leading indicator of trouble is price. The news comes out and the first thing that drops is the price. The analysts don't immediately rush to their computers and change their models for the company. That happens sometimes the next day or the next week or the next month or even the next quarter for smaller, less followed companies. So it's just something that happens with databases, and we need to be aware of that as we search those databases and as we play with these huge databases called artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and when Cannonball Man actually picks up the kitchen sink and he jumps into the pool with the sink, and you get a kitchen sink quarter and the cannonball effect, a huge disruption. It can be more than a quarter for them to figure out what in the world's going on. So I'm not making this up. There are things called kitchen sink quarters. You can look it up on Investopedia.
Well, there was even a big debate on CNBC, Mark, a couple of days ago about whether that's what United Health has done, is throw all their bad news together, everything they can think of, put it all together and get it out there so that they can make a turnaround and move forward.
Yeah,
Stephanie Link was the proponent of that theory. Yeah.
Stephanie stole that from me. We said it here last week. All right, here's a quick look at International Money Express, the company that Pat mentioned. And again, anytime you're talking about a situation like this, you have to remember the math. The factors that go into the calculation of the projected annual return are basically the sales growth rate, the profitability, and an average PE. So anything, getting deflected in that mix can be something to mess with. Now, the red line through the sales graphic on that business model analysis is at 6%. And you could make an argument that even that is robust, and maybe giving them a little bit too much credit. Who knows? Depends on what you think about that downward trend from 23 to 24 to 25. And it does seem to be ticking back up. So again, mid-single digit sales growth forecast. So we're basically showing you a sensitivity analysis. So what if you assumed 10% instead of 7.2? How much difference would that make? Keep in mind that the projected or the sales growth rate is, again, mid-single digits. And that relatively small, at least in numbers, size, takes you from 13 to 21. So again, thinking about the stuff that Ken was just describing, a small change in price can do the same thing. But it just gives you some feel for, if you do a stock selection guide on International Money Express, I'm pretty sure you'll be tempted to use a PE somewhere in the mid-teens, low to mid-teens. Anything you'd like to add to this, Ken?
Well, I just want to step 1 foot into the math of the situation, Mark. When price goes down significantly, PE goes down with it.
Yep.
Because the earnings are based on the last 4 quarters in most PEs that are being quoted to you. So when the PE falls drastically, that does not mean that the PE in the analysis falls drastically. The PE doesn't move on a daily basis. The PE is a call into the future, and it takes an analyst to change the forecast PE. The price is data, and it drops immediately, but the PE doesn't move until the analyst decides to move it. So if they had the PE at 10 and giving you a 21 par, and eventually they mean to move it down to 7 to give you a 13 par, they haven't accomplished that immediately as the price dropped. It might take them time. And for some of these smaller stocks, and this is a smaller stock, for some of these smaller stocks, it might take as much as a quarter or more before the analyst catches up, because they're only followed by 1 or 2 analysts a lot of times.
Okay, and you can see that the stock price was up in the 30 range back here, and it's down close to 10 now. So hopefully that helps a little bit, Pat. Again, pretty sensitive to a small change, and the same thing is true with the price. The price can really move that par around pretty dramatically. All right, here's your weekly reminder that we do archive our sessions, bull sessions, and roundtables on YouTube. You can find it there. If you can't find it, drop either Ken or myself a memo, and we'll be happy to help you find it. There's Mr. Cannonball, by the way. There he is, Cannonball Man, up on the upper left. Just a quick note that we will be getting together here in a few days to have a virtual national conference for NAIC Better Investing. And Ken and I will be giving 2 sessions. The first is a panel session, including the aforementioned Pat Donnelly and Cy Lynch and Robin Ware and Betsy Wills for the panel session. And then we have the 2 guys talk stock later that same day. I think those are both on June 7th.
Those are both on June 7th, right, Mark?
Good stuff. So that's out there. And of course, yesterday was the reminder that freedom is not free. Anything else you'd like to add, Ken, or are we all set?
I think we're all set. We welcome you all back to the roundtable this evening. It'll start at 8 o'clock Eastern time. And we have Mr. Galogli is going to be presenting. I'm going to be presenting. Mark's going to be presenting, and Cy Lynch is going to be presenting. And we have 3 really good ideas. We're not quite sure about Mr. Robertson's yet, but he always comes up with something. So we'll listen to what he has to say as well.
All right. Take care out there, everybody. See you later.
Hey, Mark, I'm going to give you a call real quick, okay?
Okay.